Alright, we're here today testing a couple different methods of veneering. Something went wrong with the staircase that we did last week here. And although we've never had a problem using the methods we do to stain and coat them, we're going to try to recreate the problem here and see if we can find a solution. Or at least what happened anyway. So, I've got a few different samples on here. I've got paperback veneer all the way across this row. So we've got the paperback, it's holding it all together. Now we've got the non-paperback two-sided on this side. And even though I bought the roll right off the shelf at Timbertown, a lot of it's cracking and brittle. There's a few bubbles in that right off the bat. So I think that's a problem right there in itself. I can see a big crack down the middle of this. I tried to take the best sample out of the roll I've got here, but these were the best pieces I could get out of the entire 8-foot roll by 8 inches there. So the categories that we have are non 100% coverage with contact cement, too early of adhesion after 5 minutes, 100% coverage with contact cement, early adhesion after 5 minutes, non 100% coverage with contact cement, adhesion after 30 minutes. The LePage heavy duty contact cement that we have here is what was instructed by me that the guys used on the stairs. So we're going to use the same product with the same types of veneer, and as again, like I said, non 100% coverage with contact cement, adhesion after 30 minutes. So the instructions on the can itself here read between 15 and 60 minutes. It has to be adhered, otherwise you have to apply another coat. Not earlier than 15 minutes and not later than 60. So arbitrarily we pick 30 minutes adhesion. And the last category, the last column here is 100% coverage with contact cement, adhesion after 30 minutes, which should be the right one. If anything's not going to fail, it should be under this column regardless of paperback or non-paperback veneer. So, and over here we got a control piece of 1/4 inch double-sided oak ply, and we're just going to use that for control because it's factory glued and factory pressed, so we're going to go with that. Alright, so just take these guys, move them out of the way just for a moment, and take the contact cement with our 4-inch roller. And all the sample pieces I have pre-cut here are 4 inches by 12 inches, 4 inches wide, 12 inches long, which should simulate most of the veneer that we're having problems with currently, because they're somewhere between 2 and 6 inches and several feet long. So I'm going to try this just like that. The roller 100% saturated here, so we're doing it properly. And okay, so I'm going to do 2 pieces of the paperback veneer with proper 100% coverage. There we go. And then I'm going to do 2 not so well covered, because the picture I was sent of the original veneer material used looked really bumpy and warped in that. So using a roller, I don't see how you could get coverage across the whole thing. I see it only working if you have a spray can. So I'm just going to kind of randomly hit these 2 guys here, kind of in a 50% coverage. Okay. Same with this. It's not quite covered all over the edges and everywhere entirely. And same thing with the double-sided veneer. I'm going to completely cover 2 of the samples. That. doing that. And then two of the samples, we're just going to kind of simulate improper coverage. Like that. And the material I'm attaching it to is 3/4 inch ply with birch veneer on it. It's been sanded with an 80 grit palm sander just to remove all the debris and any oxidation and to rough it up a little bit as according to the instructions on the contact cement can. So those guys are all good. Put those over there. And I'm going to assume that the veneer may not have 100% coverage. However, the surface that it was applied to should have 100% coverage, just because we assumed that that was flat and sanded and ready to go right off the bat. So on the actual test board here, we're going to put 100% coverage on the sample board. Okay, we'll get rid of that. Again, we're just assuming that the veneer didn't get coated properly with the contact cement, just because of the pre-existing cracks and the dips and valleys on the pieces that we saw that may have been used for it. So that's it for now. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes and attach the pieces that are going on too early, pre the 15 to 60 minutes that the contact cement can directs us to. Okay, so we're about 5, 6, 7 minutes after I've applied the contact cement here. So as per the chart, I've got this one paperback veneer, which is not 100% coverage on it, just to simulate the bumpy veneer that we saw. So we're going to go and stick that on the adhesion after 5 minutes. Okay, and then there's this guy here, which is 100% coverage after 5 minutes, the paperbacked veneer. Okay. And then we've got the regular two-sided veneer, improper coverage after 5 minutes, which is kind of cracking in my hand just as I'm touching it here. And then we've got the 100% coverage after 5 minutes, two-sided veneer. Okay. And then per instruction, according to the contact cement, we use a J roller. Make sure she's on nice and good. Get any bubbles out that we can. Make sure she's nice and flat. Equal pressure. And I can sort of feel right through the roller. It's almost working better on the paperback stuff. But we'll see when it's all dried up here. Okay. So there's those guys. Now I'm going to come back after the 30-minute mark here and attach the other 4 pieces, which should be proper adhesion. Like the contact cement can reads somewhere between 50 and 60 minutes. So we're just assuming that the surface area is small enough that 30 minutes should be a good approximation of good bonding time. Alright, it's been about 30-35 minutes since we applied the contact cement. So, again, we've got the paperback veneer here, non 100% coverage. It's kind of random, maybe about 50% coverage on average. 100% coverage on the surface. We'll just tack that down. And we've got the paperback veneered, 100% coverage, and waiting the 30 to 35 minutes before applying it. Touch that down for a second. We've got the regular two-sided veneer, non 100% coverage after 30 minutes. And we've got the 100% coverage after 30 minutes, regular two-sided veneer. So tack that down. Use the J roller as as instructed on the contact cement. Crackling a little bit, getting the air bubbles out. And yeah, the two-sided stuff seems to crackle a lot. So I'm gonna hit up a little bit extra like I did versus the paperback veneer. Okay, now we're gonna leave that an hour or so, make sure the contact cement is nice and dry before we try water popping, and we'll inspect it before we do the water pop test and after the water pop test. Alright, it's been over 90 minutes since I first applied the contact cement to any surface here, so I can't find anything that's tacky or even close to wet anymore, so we're going to go ahead and try the water pop test. Now, just before I do that, I was tapping on these guys to find out if there's any hollow spots or not. The prefab 1/4 inch plywood with veneer on it doesn't seem to have any issues with it. Nothing visible, no hollow spots that I can hear. Now, what does have a few hollow spots in it is all the two-sided veneer, regardless of the 4 methods I tried attaching it. There's a little bit of, I can hear some hollow pockets underneath here, under all of them. But I don't see any physical blisters or cracking yet. Now, with the paperback veneer, I can't seem to find any hollow spots by a sound, except for the 3rd one here, which didn't have 100% coverage but was glued after 30 minutes. I can hear a little bit of hollow, probably where there was no contact cement applied. So we're going to go ahead and I'm going to water pop it with my mister here. And all this does is apply a light mist via pressure. So we're just going to go and spray everything here real quick. Same method we always use to do floors and stairs and so on. And that's it. We're going to let that dry up for an hour, hour and a half, see if there's any physical blistering or cracking or anything going on after that, or more hollow spots. So we'll leave it till then, check it, and then go over this again, and then I'll apply the stain, and we'll see what happens after that. Alright, well, it's been about an hour, hour and a half since we water popped all these surfaces here, and just from this perspective you can probably see right away that all the two-sided veneer, regardless of the method we use to apply with the contact cement, is blistered and parts of it are cracking already. It's, I mean, you can hear it, you can see it popping up and down. So the water popping definitely has damaged all 4, regardless of whether it was glued properly like this with 100% coverage, 30 minutes dry time. But all 4 are affected. 2 of the paperback veneers are also popping a little bit, and we're getting blisters in them, and those are the 2 that didn't have 100% coverage with the contact cement. Only 50% on one of the surfaces, 100% on the other. So we're getting a little bit of that. The only 2 that are perfectly fine are the ones that were adhered with 100% coverage. Even the one that was too early, it was applied after 5 minutes rather than waiting at least 15 minutes like the contact cement reads. And this surface here, the 1/4 inch ply with the double-sided veneer already on it, factory glued and pressed, it's just fine too. There's no problems, there's no hollow spots. The grain's water popped and embossed just like we wanted it to, just like we need it to match the customer's floor, because our pre-finished product is all embossed and water popped as well. So obviously the water popping is what has affected this two-sided regular veneer. And in the case of the paperback, with 100% coverage, waiting the right dry time, we're fine. I don't seem to have any problems with it at all. There's no hollow spots that I can find. It's perfectly flat. There's no bubbling, no blistering, no cracking. So I'm just going to go ahead here and apply the stain anyway. So we're going to go complete the whole test and catch it up to the stage where the current stairs are right now. So same way we applied it on the staircase, just using a slightly damp rag. It's an oil-based stain that takes at least 48 hours to dry before we can coat it with our waterborne flooring coating. So I'm just going to go ahead and stain all these guys. Of course, these ones that are all bubbling here, they're a little bit harder to stain because I got to get right into the grooves there. And this is a wiping stain, so I'm going to put it on, leave it for a minute or two. We got anywhere between about 60 and 180 seconds, so a minute to 3 to wipe it off. According to Paint Direct standards, they made up the stain for us because it's such a black stain that it's not the normal stain we would use. We usually use the Bona Dry Fast stain that's specifically made for hardwood. Sets up in about 3 hours, and then you can actually apply coating on top of it. Okay, it's been 48 hours since the stain was applied here, and actually the swelling and all the buckling and blisters and cracking of that have gone down quite a bit on all 4 of the double-sided veneer. Because I was kind of surprised yesterday right after I saw the effects of the water popping there. I didn't see it that dramatic, mostly because I ended on a Friday afternoon just by water popping everything, and then I came back next morning at 6 a.m. to stain everything. So at the time everything looked just fine until I got the black stain on it. Then I could see, you know, some bubbling going on here and there. But all in all, it does look a lot better after a couple of days here. This one is almost perfect. There's a couple of hollow spots and a little bit of blistering going on still. But, yeah, so I mean, it's still damaged, but these guys here are still perfectly fine, especially the one here that had 100% coverage with 30 minutes adhesion time. So, also on the back of the control piece of plywood here, I didn't water pop this side, and you can see that the grain's not anywhere near as raised. Actually, it's not raised at all versus the other side, and the color's just way too light on it. So we don't have any choice except to water pop with this type of stain to make it match. That's way too light. You can see it in comparison with the other ones here, and that's how it should be. And we can only get that by water popping the surface to open up the pores. So I'm going to go ahead and coat everything here. And we'll turn the camera back on after it's all dried up, and I guess that'll be it for now. So yeah, I'll let this dry up for a good 2-3 hours, just like it recommends on the package. Okay. Okay, well this is 5 minutes after applying the coating here, and yeah, I can definitely see all this is blistering again, just from the waterborne coating. And I suspect it's going to do the same thing, settle down again, but nonetheless, we don't have that adhesion where it's raised and blistered here. So we'll check it again once it's dried up, and do one more test here. Alright, this is about an hour after applying the coating. You can see everything is really bubbled up and blistered again from the waterborne coating. I'm going to leave that, I don't know, another couple hours, see if it comes down at all. And then we'll take one more shot with the video camera here. Alright, well this test seems pretty conclusive. Whenever we applied any oil or water-based products, such as the water when we water popped it, plus the waterborne coating on this, it's just, obviously it's blistered everything on the two-sided regular veneer. The paperback veneer is fine with both applications where it was attached properly. As well, the 1/4 inch ply, we've got no cracking, no blisters, nothing like that. It looks perfectly fine, as well as the paperback veneer. So apparently, yeah, water products on the two-sided regular veneer is just not going to work for our application. So we'll leave it at that. I think that's the end of the test, and